Well, today we'll be looking at two different rounds. We'll be testing Hornady Critical Defense against the Buffalo Bore with the 80 grain Barnes bullet. Buffalo Bore advertises their product at 1,275 feet per second with the Barnes X bullet. The other contender today is Hornady's Critical Defense, which is a low flash, low recoil round. It has the red polymer tip, which is to prevent the hollow point from getting clogged. It also has a cantilure to prevent bullet setback if you rechamber the same round repetitively. There are some pretty good ballistics gel tests out there. One from Scuba Oz, one from Tennessee Outdoors 9. I do not believe either of them have tested the Barnes X bullet from Buffalo Bore in the ballistics gel media. The block that we have ready to go has been tested out at 3.4 inch penetration with a BB traveling at 594 feet per second. Half of the block has beef bones in it to see how these two rounds penetrate bone. 380 is not the optimal cartridge for self-defense, but since I have the 380, it is a backup gun, and it is about the only gun that my wife can handle the recoil. I would like to see if there's any bullet out there besides Full Metal Jacket that I would trust to have enough penetration. So let's get out to the range and break this thing down. Okay, here's the setup. Got the beef bones in there. A little bit of backing in case the bullet fails to expand. I'm going to be shooting this from about 20 feet. As you see, we have penetration. See here, the Barnes bullet in 380 utterly passed through the bone, which was 1.5 inches thick, and the bullet kept on going. It did not exit. None of the bullets here exited. So the only thing that exited were the 38 Special in the Barnes. And let's bring this back into the garage. I'm going to dissect this out and get some penetration numbers, both for the Barnes and the critical defense in 380, and we'll sum things up. And here is the entrance wound from the Hornady critical defense into the bone, and some of the material that was brought in there with it. Let's see what happened to the critical defense. And that is what happened. It stopped literally just a 1/2 inch into the bone. That's after penetration of approximately a 1/2 inch of gel. And that's the story with that. That does look sharp, so I'm going to have to pull that out with a set of pliers maybe and see what that does for us here. So again, not terribly impressed with the performance of the critical defense as far as when it actually does hit bone. That would not have even penetrated a human rib bone on that one. Okay, so here is the entrance wound for the Barnes bullet in 380. It utterly annihilated this bone that is essentially, it penetrated about 1.5 inches, penetrated approximately 1.5 inches of bone. The fragment down here is split in two. So upon the entrance here, the path of the bullet should have gone along that line there, but instead it deviated to the right, and you can see where the recovered bullet was found. This equates to 5 1/4 inches of bullet penetration. Okay, so entrance right there, we trace this along. The bullet is right under my thumb there at 11 inches. So we're going to carve that out now. Okay, here's the wound track for the 38 Special Barnes bullet. I'm sorry, the 357 Barnes bullet utterly annihilated the bone as it went through. Here's part of the stretch cavity, and then we will go to the other side for the rest of the stretch cavity here, and that stretch cavity is 3/4 of an inch there. Goes through, and then again you can see bits of bone inside there, and it exited out the back, which is 15 inches, and penetrated about, it's a 4-inch thick jug of water, and rattled around a bit there. So impressive in terms of its ability to shred bone and continue along with some decent expansion. Again, that's in 357. Quite a bit more power to it than the 380s that we've been looking at. Okay, here's the breakdown for the critical defense. 4 layers of denim, it penetrated 13.25 inches into the block. Let me get in tight over here. And as you can see, it did tip upward just a bit. Okay, here is a wrap-up of the results. I hope the results compensate for the crappy sound quality and video quality of some of the preceding shots, but let's go ahead and focus on this chart and break this thing down. First off, let's zoom in here. This was 10% ordnance gel measured in at 63 degrees Fahrenheit. The BB calibration was 3.4 inches at 564 feet per second. All shots were done through 4 layers of denim. The bone shots were 1.5 inches thick bone at about a 1/2 inch depth for all of those shots. The 380 ACP that was used was the CZ83 with a 3.5 inch barrel. The 357 that was used was my concealed carry gun, which is the 340 PD. That's a lightweight Smith Wesson 2-inch barrel that shoots 357s. Let's go down. Let's take the 380s first. It was the Buffalo bore 80 grain Barnes bullet, which chronographed at 12.23 average. Very narrow extreme spread for 5 shots of only about 10 feet per second. The first bullet that we zoom in on here is the recovered bullet, and this was no bone, 4 layers of denim. Depth of penetration 11.25 inches. Diameter very consistent, 0.75 inches, and a stretch cavity extending about 3 inches long, between 3/4 to 1 inch permanent stretch cavity. Not too shabby for a 380 actually. We go down to the 380 that hit the bone. The depth of penetration 5.5 inches. That was that deviated about 23 degrees to the right. The bullet diameter very uneven, as it looked like a couple of the petals were slammed back as it blew apart the bone. 0.5 inch diameter at its narrowest, 0.75 inch at its peak. There was negligible stretch cavity. Now, as we break down the Hornady critical defense in 380, when there's no bone struck, the numbers look pretty impressive for a 380. Depth of penetration was 13.25. Again, I don't know how this, I think this is a couple inches deeper than what Tennessee Outdoors 9 got on his. Not terribly even expansion, not bad. The expansion was 0.5 to 0.625. Nice little stretch cavity on this one, between 1 inch and 1.5 inches stretch cavity, which for a 380 that's surprising. Now we move down for what happens to the critical defense when it strikes bone. This was just not terribly impressive. Let's back up here. Depth of penetration 1 inch, i.e. it went through a 1/2 inch of gel, another 1/2 inch of bone. Recovered diameter fragments, thrashed, utter failure. Not something that I'm going to keep in my gun. Next one, let's move to the 357, break it down. Federal 140 grain Barnes, chronographed at 1100 feet per second out of that snub nose. Depth of penetration 15 inches plus another 6 inches of water, and it dented the back of the jug. Recovered diameter 0.625. Stretch cavity varying between 1.5 to 2 inches, and sliced most of the way. Move down to the one that struck the bone. It blew the bone apart, annihilated it. Penetrated the full 15 inches, deviated to the left a little bit. It sliced, I have this listed as no dent in the back, but it did slice the back of the jug, and I thought it had exited, but it did not. It just sliced it. Recovered diameter variable between 0.5 and 0.55 inches. So when it blew that bone apart, it apparently beat the petals back a little bit more than on its non-bone striking counterpart. Stretch cavity, in spite of that, was about 1.5 inches. So overall, very happy with the Barnes bullets in both my snub-nose revolver. This round will be replacing the 38 plus P Buffalo bore lead hollow point. The Barnes bullet in the Buffalo bore incarnation for the 380, that is what will be in my CZ83 as just a backup gun. So hope this data makes up for the crappy video quality. Enjoy.